Tonight, delicate diplomacy. China's President Xi arrives in France to kick off his monumental Europe tour. The EU preparing for the shift in industrial and diplomatic relations with the global leader. Make way for Modi. India prepares for another tranche of voting as the nation's Prime Minister ups his political game in hopes of decimating the opposition. Gaza's plight. Israel dismisses any hopes of finding middle ground, preparing for an incursion into Rafah once more. And Madonna madness. Millions light up the shores of Brazil as the musical legend closes off her celebration tour with a bang. All that and more as World News Tonight starts right now.
This is Derana World News Tonight. Reporting from Colombo, here's Anuradhi Vikramasinghe.
A very good evening and thank you for taking the time to join us on World News. With the start of a new week, we have a number of updates to bring to you from across the globe. And we start off with some delicate diplomacy moves underway. Chinese leader Xi Jinping is in France for a state visit, marking the 60th anniversary of Beijing-Paris ties. Xi's first trip to Europe in 5 years will also include visits to China-friendly countries of Serbia and Hungary.
Chinese President Xi Jinping's first visit to Europe in 5 years starts in France on Monday with a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron. The U.S. media has interpreted this visit as an attempt to restore damaged China-Europe relations amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine and to seek strategic opportunity to exploit division between the United States and Europe. Soon after his arrival in Paris on Sunday, China's President Xi Jinping said in a statement that the relations between China and France have established a model for the international community of peaceful coexistence and win-win cooperation between countries with different social systems. Following his visit to France, Xi is set to head over to Serbia and Hungary. The New York Times on Sunday said that the three countries that Xi Jinping has chosen to visit all to a certain degree see China as a necessary counterweight to the U.S. and are eager to strengthen economic ties. It also added that Mr. Xi wants to demonstrate China's growing influence on the continent and pursue a pragmatic rapprochement.
For nearly 60 years, we have been committed to building a stable and balanced world. And dialogue and communication between France and China has made indispensable contributions in that regard.
In particular, the New York Times analyzed that President Xi's visit to Serbia, coinciding with the 25th anniversary of the bombing of the Chinese embassy by NATO forces, carries profound political implications. The incident, which the U.S. apologized for and maintains was a mistake, killed 17 Chinese nationals, including 3 journalists. In the New York Times article, the director of the Asia program at the European Council on Foreign Relations in Berlin commented for Xi, being in Belgrade is a very economical way to ask if the United States is really serious about international law and to raise concerns about NATO's actions affecting other countries. On Monday, French President Emmanuel Macron will host the Chinese president for an official state visit. A trilateral meeting is set to take place with the President of the European Commission to discuss trade issues between the EU and China. Macron will also advocate for equitable trade policies and urge China to use its influence with Russia to help end the war in Ukraine.
Now, when Xi Jinping arrived in Italy for a state visit in 2019, he was given a lavish welcome with private tours of Roman landmarks and a dinner serenaded by opera singer Andrea Bocelli, topped with a crowning flourish: Italy's decision to join Xi's signature Belt and Road Infrastructure Initiative. 5 years on, however, the Chinese leader returns to Europe in a very different climate. And while the pomp and ceremony may remain during his 6-day European tour, views on China across the continent have shifted dramatically since his last visit. Now, for an analysis on the ground, we have Derana World News special correspondent Don Kaluarchi from London in the UK. What do you have for us, Don?
Yes, Anuradhi. In the past few weeks alone, the European Union has launched trade probes into China's wind turbines and procurement of medical equipment. In March, Italy formally exited the Belt and Road Initiative, costing the program its only G7 member country in a blow to China and its leader. Now, Xi's trip is an opportunity to woo his critics, but also showcase that even as views are hardening in some parts of Europe, others still welcome China with open arms. Major breakthroughs with China's toughest critics will be hard to come by unless Xi is ready to make surprise concessions. And analysts say the trip could instead serve to underscore division not only between Europe and China, but those within Europe that could play in China's favor. Back to you, Anuradhi.
All right, thank you very much. That was Other Derana World News Special Correspondent Don Kaluarchi from London in the UK. More diplomatic moves are being made in our region tonight. Japan's Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa was greeted by her Nepalese counterpart, Sewa Lamsal, on arrival in Kathmandu.
Kamikawa was also seen touring Kathmandu's sacred UNESCO sites and greeting people at the Durbar Square. The Japanese Foreign Minister said in a statement that she was scheduled to meet the Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal and the Deputy Prime Minister Narayan Kalji Shrestha to discuss ways to broaden and strengthen their relationship. Kamikawa is the fourth Japanese Foreign Minister to visit Nepal since the two countries established diplomatic relations in 1956.
And over in neighbouring India now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi prayed at the Grand Temple to the Hindu god Lord Ram and held a road show with tens of thousands of supporters as part of election campaigning in India's northern city of Ayodhya.
Indians are voting in a 7-phase parliamentary election, the biggest in the world, that began on April 19th and will end on the June 1st. Around 106 million people were expected to have voted in the second phase on April 26th. The next phase will take place tomorrow. Modi is the 14th Prime Minister of India and began his premiership in 2014. He is seeking a rare third term and is widely tipped to win. In an attempt to widen the gap, Modi's campaign has also employed the support of influencers to garner better support from the youth in India's urban hotspots. Election results are due on the 4th of June.
We're going in for a short commercial break now. We'll be right back with more key global updates. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We have updates now on the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Israeli military says that it is encouraging people in the southern Gaza city of Rafah to move towards an expanded humanitarian zone. It comes ahead of an expected offensive on the city where more than 1.4 million people are sheltering. The Israeli Defense Forces says it is a limited scope operation and not a wide-scale evacuation of eastern Rafah, which will affect about 100,000 people.
Video shows the rubble following what Palestinians said was an Israeli airstrike in the city of Rafah in the Gaza Strip. And it comes amid what seem to be dwindling prospects for ceasefire talks in Cairo. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday flat out rejected what he said were Hamas's demands for a potential truce. Netanyahu said the Palestinian Islamist group wanted the removal of all Israeli forces from Gaza and a permanent end to the fighting, which would leave Hamas in power. He said, quote, "The state of Israel cannot accept that." Hamas, meanwhile, blamed Israel for the impasse. In a statement, Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh accused Netanyahu of, quote, sabotaging efforts made through the mediators. A Palestinian official close to the mediation effort told on Sunday, quote, "If Netanyahu doesn't change his mind, there will be no reason to stay." And the fighting continues. Israeli soldiers at the Kerem Shalom crossing between Gaza and Israel inspected armored vehicles after Hamas claimed it had attacked the position on Sunday. Earlier in the day, trucks carrying desperately needed humanitarian aid passed through the crossing, but following the attack, Israel said the crossing had been closed. The war began after Hamas stunned Israel with a cross-border raid on October 7th, in which Israel says 1,200 people were killed and over 250 hostages taken. More than 34,600 Palestinians have been killed in Israel's subsequent assault, according to Gaza's health ministry. The bombardment has devastated much of the coastal enclave and caused a humanitarian crisis. Israel has been warning for months it plans to send troops into Rafah, the southern city bordering Egypt, where more than 1 million displaced Gaza residents have taken refuge. Israel believes thousands of Hamas fighters are holed up in the city, along with potentially dozens of hostages. The United Nations on Friday warned such an operation would potentially put thousands more lives at risk. The Israeli military on Sunday released video of Defense Minister Yoav Gallant meeting commanders in Gaza. Gallant said there were signs Hamas did not intend to reach an agreement. He said, quote, "This means strong military action in Rafah will begin in the very near future and in the rest of the Strip." But the deadlock in Cairo continues to turn up the heat on Netanyahu. Thousands of Israelis protested on Saturday, demanding the prime minister accept a ceasefire agreement with Hamas that would see the remaining hostages brought home.
And on the conflict over the Russian borders, the EU's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, has admitted that not every member state sees Russia as Europe's most existential threat. He argued that disputes between members are preventing the bloc from taking a unified stance on Moscow and are holding back military aid to Ukraine. For more on this, we have Other Derana World News special correspondent Manoli Zagaria from Kursk in Russia. Manoli?
Yes, Anuradhi. Speaking at Oxford University in the UK, Borrell said he sees more confrontation and less cooperation in the world affairs and brought up instances of dissent among EU members when it comes to Russian President Vladimir Putin and the conflict in Ukraine. Prime Ministers Viktor Orban of Hungary and Robert Fico of Slovakia have refused to send weapons to Ukraine and stressed that the conflict should be resolved through negotiations. Russia said that it has hit Ukrainian energy facilities over the past 7 days, while Ukraine stated on the same day that it has attacked Russia's command posts over the past 24 hours, according to their latest updates on the conflict. Back to you, Anuradhi.
All right, thank you very much. That was Other Derana World News special correspondent Manoli Zagaria from Kursk in Russia. And on the road to the White House tonight, Democrats are rallying behind President Biden's response to pro-Palestinian protests, while Republicans pounced on Biden's position. Speculation is also increasing over who Trump will pick as his running mate.
Today, Democrats are rallying behind President Biden's response to pro-Palestinian student protests, saying dissent is essential for democracy, but it must never lead to disorder. Republicans have pounced on Biden's position.
It was 2 weeks after these pro-Hamas fanatics had taken over a lot of campuses and set up these little Gazas.
Former President Donald Trump also took aim, saying on Truth Social that President Biden, quote, doesn't know what to do. Trump's critique comes as speculation grows over who he'll pick as a running mate. Last night, he hosted the RNC spring meeting at Mar-a-Lago.
I certainly expect to have a decision from President Trump in the next 60 days or so.
Also on the rumored shortlist, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, appearing on Face the Nation today, promoting her controversial new memoir. She's come under fire after revealing she shot and killed her 14-month-old puppy. She also told Face the Nation the book had to be edited after a claim about meeting Kim Jong-un turned out to be false, though she declined to say that she never met the North Korean leader.
Floods continue to prove fatal in Brazil as the torrent waters cause even more displacements and deaths in Rio Grande do Sul. Landslides are also hindering rescue efforts in the region.
Massive flooding caused by heavy rain in Brazil's southern state of Rio Grande do Sul has pushed the death toll up at least 78 people by the end of Sunday, with nearly 120,000 people displaced. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and his cabinet arrived in the region on Sunday morning to discuss rescue and reconstruction efforts with local authorities.
I know that we have many state roads that need repair. I want to tell you that I'm not worried because the federal government, through the Ministry of Transportation, will help you recover the state roads.
Volunteers with boats, jet skis, or that were even simply swimming have helped ongoing rescue efforts. The death toll could still drastically increase as over 100 people were reported missing on Sunday, according to the state civil defense authority. Flooding from the storms over the past few days has affected more than 2/3 of the nearly 500 cities in the state, which sits on the border with Uruguay and Argentina. An Instagram video from the Army's Aviation Command showed an officer hitting the roof of the house with a brick to rescue the child and pull him to safety. The toddler and his relatives were trapped in the floods in Lajeado in southern Brazil. Floods have destroyed roads and bridges in several cities. The rain also triggered landslides and the partial collapse of a dam at a small hydroelectric power plant, leaving nearly 500,000 people without power on Sunday evening.
Let's go in for a short commercial break now. More world news right after this. Welcome back. Tonight, we end off with a celebration for the history books. US pop star Madonna performed a free concert at Brazil's Copacabana beach, drawing a crowd of some 1.6 million people who filled the area around the famed beach in Rio de Janeiro for several blocks. Madonna performed songs such as Nothing Really Matters, Like a Prayer and Vogue for over 2 hours. Rio state and city government said they spent $3.9 million on the concert, while the rest was financed by private sponsors. The authorities estimate the concert could bring about 300 million reais to Rio's economy. The Brazilian show marked the end of her Greatest Hits World Tour celebration, which started in late 2023. Madonna madness is real, and honestly, I'm all here for it, because who doesn't love good music and a great time? But that's all the stories we have to report to you tonight on World News. Tune in again tomorrow for more key updates from across the globe. Thank you very much for watching. Good night.